hosting. It's exciting to be around so many brilliant minds and on a very interesting panel. And I think that in the welcoming remarks, it was said very aptly that we don't get many opportunities for these two worlds to collide, the private and the public sector. So this is a very unique opportunity, I think. So I would like to start out talking about migrants, because we are the United Nations Migration Agency. And Dane also mentioned that there's a lot of negative press on migrants lately all over the world. And so I would like to clarify some points. I'd like to start out by saying I'm a migrant, and there are many migrants that are here in this room. Migrants are those that are living and working outside of their home country. And basically, because of that, for businesses, they are essentially human capital. In Thailand, migrants can legally work in all sectors except for 39 that are reserved for the Thais themselves. And like Thais, they're covered by the Labor Protection Act, and they're entitled to the same rights as workers. And I'd like to clarify that Thailand actually is quite socially progressive when it comes to migrants. They have access to education, so migrant children have access to education, and they have access to universal health care. And Thailand is actually a leader in the region when it comes to those two aspects. And so if treated well, migrants can be a competitive advantage. We need to focus on that. They are willing to work hard in difficult jobs that mostly Thais do not want to take, and these are in areas such as construction and agriculture, in manufacturing, domestic work, hospitality. So they are needed in this country. And I will talk more about that shortly. So we see a lot of, in the press, we see a lot of negative coverage on migrants. So I would like to highlight a positive story. This is Joey, and he came to Thailand when he was only 16 years old. He had no formal education. He did not speak Thai. He did not speak English. And he started out by working in construction sites, in gardening, and in hospitality as a waiter. But he was very eager to learn. He was very eager to know more. He taught himself Thai. He taught himself English. And he now is fluent in both languages. He is the manager of Seven Spoons in the Old City. If anybody has been there, it's an excellent restaurant. He manages 12 staff. And he achieved all of this by himself. He was not trained. He was not given any special attention or care or that ladder that Dave mentioned. So imagine what he could do if we did provide the training for him in the way that many others have access to training and education. And in fact, IOM did train Joey in hospitality, and he hopes to someday open his own restaurant. So there are many Joeys in Thailand. There are many Joeys throughout the world, but we don't hear about them. We hear the negative media statements about migrants taking our jobs, them working here illegally, that they bring crime. A lot of that false information is just statistically disproven. I think it's important to focus on that. So what are migrants' contributions specifically to Thailand? As we all know, Thailand has an aging population, and that means that by 2050, 35% of Thailand's population is going to be over the age of 60. That is a significant number. So that, combined with the low unemployment rate, which as of June 2018 was 1.1%, means there is a tremendously high demand for migrants and for the type of labor. Also, Thailand is the 8th largest economy in Asia Pacific, which is an important statistic to keep in mind, and it has very healthy economic growth. In 2017, it was 4.6%. So all of these reasons suggest that there is going to be a demand for labor that Thais cannot fill, and so we are going to need migrants to fill these. Currently, right now, there are about 4 to 5 million migrants in Thailand, and they primarily come from the neighboring countries that you see there. So even though migrants only make up 4.7% of the employed population, they actually contribute to 6.6% of the GDP. And as I mentioned before, they are employed in labor-intensive sectors, construction, agriculture, manufacturing, fishing, domestic work, and services. These are jobs that Thais tend not to be very interested in working. So also, let's remember that migrants complement the work that Thais are doing. For example, in the fishing sector, those that are working on the fishing vessels are actually supporting the captains, the boat manufacturing, those companies that are taking the produce that is captured in the seas and then selling it abroad over to the Thai consumer market. So migrants are actually part of this whole supply chain that we see that has a global reach, not just to Thailand. Okay, so now I would like to talk a bit about IOM. I think there are people in this room who've never heard of IOM, the International Organization for Migration. And so, first of all, I'd like to mention that IOM has existed in Thailand since 1975, so for 43 years. It was established during the Indo-Chinese War to help resettle refugees. And to this day, we are still resettling refugees from the Nai refugee camps and urban refugees from Bangkok. So that's what we've been doing for a long time. Thailand became a member state in 1986. And IOM is actually the largest United Nations agency working in Thailand. We currently have 386 staff who are working for us. Now, for many of the companies here that employ tens of thousands of people, that number seems quite small, but actually it's one of the biggest missions that IOM has around the world. We have 35 projects that we're implementing, and everything from counter trafficking to helping migrant children get access to education, to labor migration, and some other projects that I'll be mentioning soon. And so we have 10 offices throughout the country. We also have some medical labs that we're working in. And we are very committed to the public-private partnerships. I should start out by saying that IOM is the UN Migration Agency. We have over 10,000 employees worldwide, over 400 offices, and our headquarters are based in Geneva. So I want to talk a little bit now about IOM and social enterprise and give some examples. These examples are specifically from the country Georgia, where in 2016 we supported 6 social enterprise endeavors, and after just 1 year, 4 of those were sustainable and that they were creating revenue. And the areas in which that these 4 specifically, the examples that I'll give you, and these are examples that then we can take during the hackathon. And these are the type of examples that we can come up with during our exercises tomorrow. So one was a cafeteria, another one was a car wash, another one was a company dedicated to decorative trees and flowers and organic produce. And then the 4th one that remained sustainable for the long term was making wooden toys out of organic material and other souvenirs. And in fact, then the government of Georgia, with this one company, decided to do sole sourcing, so there didn't have to be a competitive bid process if somebody wanted to source from this particular company. And so in the case of these 4 social enterprise, what happened is that they were rehabilitating former drug users through their work. So it's simultaneously in parallel with the drug rehabilitation, these individuals were also working for these companies, for these NGOs, these social enterprises. So 140 beneficiaries were employed in total, and it ended up being this is a very successful example of those that were fully sustainable and profitable after just 1 year. And in fact, even mid-year, they were already much ahead of what was anticipated for their success. So these are the type of ideas that we can start thinking about. But clearly already there are companies in this room that are already doing a lot of work in Thailand, which is impressive. Okay, I'd like to talk a little bit more about IOM's work with the private sector. Social enterprise is very important, and we're also working in other areas directly with the private sector, which might interest those that are here. We have a program called Promise, and this is skills development for migrants. So basically, what we're doing is vulnerable migrants, especially targeting women we are upskilling them in construction, hospitality, domestic care, and we are training them so that they can be more marketable, but also then we are linking them with Thai companies, so that Thai companies then can employ these. So I was recently at Mesot and I visited the training center where there's a group, and in fact in this group that we have recruited from Myanmar, some of them are former refugees that were in the refugee camps along the border, so that's quite significant. And they are learning all aspects of hospitality, everything from making the beds to how a kitchen works to how to greet the guests at a reception and how to arrange the flowers. So these are skills that people like Joey didn't get the opportunity to have, but that we are training them, and then we're matching them with Thai hotels that need these type of skills. And if you think about the fact that these are, in this case, Burmese speakers, and we also just had a Cambodian group who finished as well. They speak the language of our neighboring countries. They also speak Thai, they speak English. And so for those companies here, and this is something Dave and I talked about, these are great employees to have for companies that have businesses in the neighboring countries, because they can be that bridge between the Thai, the English, and of course their native language, and they understand the culture in those neighboring countries. So that is an example of the skills development that we're currently doing here in Thailand for migrants. And we also focus on ethical recruitment. And so this is a program called IRIS, the International Recruitment Integrity System. Dane also mentioned this in his speech this morning about how many times migrants are recruited in very unethical ways in which they are paying sometimes up to thousands of dollars before they even start working for your company. And so that means that they had to take out loans and they owe a lot of money before they can even start. So their first sometimes years of working is just trying to pay back their loans so that they could get a job. I think we can argue that few of us in this room had to pay to get our jobs. And for those that are the poorest or have the least education that are doing the low-skilled jobs, why are they paying all of this money? So IOM is working with ethical recruitment, we're working with companies so that they can actually either directly recruit migrants who are working with them or in their supply chains, or so that they can find recruitment agencies that are IRIS certified, meaning that it is guaranteed that they have these standards that demonstrate that they are an ethical recruitment agency. And then the third area that we're working with companies is through our QUEST program. This stands for Corporate Responsibility in Eliminating Slavery and Trafficking. And so this is where especially multinationals are looking for their supply chains, and they want to make sure that there's no labor exploitation in their supply chains. So that, for example, companies in Thailand do not have victims of trafficking who are working in their factories or on their ships or on their farms, and that there are no questionable practices. For example, you might not know this, but it is not legal to confiscate somebody's passport while they're working for you. So these type of practices, especially for multinational companies, where you've got laws in the United States and in the UK, soon in Australia, that demand that supply chains are abiding by international standards or the laws by these countries, then it's really important for that to trickle down to the suppliers that are here in Thailand. So we work to do labor supply chain mapping to make sure that there's no exploitation in the recruitment, and that we work on victims of trafficking to make sure to educate on how to prevent trafficking into their supply chain management. And so we're working with everyone from HR to middle management in terms of how to prevent these labor exploitation and unethical recruitment in their companies. So I think that gives you a snapshot in terms of what are migrants, why are they important to the Thai economy and to the companies that are represented here, and what is IOM and how can we work more with you in all of these different areas. So thank you.